Let's start the homework questions from section 4.4, starting with question number 2. And for question number 2, we're given this table where line 1 has a slope of m1, and line 2 has a slope of m2, and line 3 has a slope of m3. And we want to make sure that line 1 and 2 are parallel. And for lines 1 and 3, we want to make sure that the lines are perpendicular. So this little table question is testing if you understand the concept of parallel and perpendicular lines. Okay, so if the first line has a slope of 2/3, if I want to be parallel to another line of m2, then it must have the same slope, so this is going to be 2/3. All right, so lines that have the same slope are parallel. Now for the third box, we want to make sure that we're perpendicular, right? So because the first two boxes are positive, then a perpendicular line has a negative slope, and all you have to do to the slope now is just flip it, or the reciprocal of that, so it's going to be -3/2. Okay, so for the second box, line 2 has a slope of -3/4. Now, for the first box, if you want to be parallel, you must have the same slope. So if two lines are parallel, they have the same slope. And for the third box, because it's perpendicular in the third box, since the first two lines have a negative slope, then you must have a positive slope for your perpendicular case. And all you have to do is just flip the fraction, the reciprocal, which is 4/3. So positive 4/3 for the perpendicular case. All right, so for the third box, we're given a slope of -4. So if I want a parallel case, then the slopes have to be positive. And since this is the same thing as 4/1, then the reciprocal of 4/1 is 1/4. So 1/4 in that case. Okay, I'm going to skip the next two, and then I will now work on the questions over here. There's some questions that are good, and some questions we'll skip. Now, when you have the undefined case, basically what that means is you should have a slope of 0 for your parallel case. Because what is 1/0, or the reciprocal of 0? Sorry, I didn't explain that correctly. If I have 0, that's the same thing as 0/1. And if I find the reciprocal of that, that's going to be 1/0. Now, if you go home and you tell your parents that the test was at a 0 and you got one question right, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is the undefined case. Okay, so if undefined is 1/0, then the reciprocal of that is going to be 0/1, which is, that's why that's 0, and that's why that's 0. Okay, after that, let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. If you have a slope of 0 here, and if you're parallel, then you'll have a slope of 0, and then for the next case, this will be 1/0, which is undefined. So undefined on that case. And for the next one here, if this has a slope of 0, then your first box must have a slope of 0 because it's parallel, and the undefined case is 1/0. Sorry, the perpendicular case is 1/0, which is undefined. And that's how you kind of complete that first particular table there. Okay, let's move on to the next set of homework questions here. So on the next one here, we're on question number 3. And we're given some coordinates here, 0, 4, and -1, 2. And we're also given -3, 5, and 1, 7. And we have a line that goes through these points. And we want to see if these lines are parallel or perpendicular or neither. Okay, so in order to find the slope from the first set of points, we're using the y2 minus y1. So y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Method to find the slope. So the question here now is, what is y2? Well, y2 is going to be 2, so 2 minus, and then what is y1? Well, y1 is going to be 4, so 2 minus 4 all over, and then what is x2? Well, x2 is -1, so -1 minus, and then what is x1 here? What is x1? Well, x1 is 0, so 1 minus 0. Okay, so if I do that, I get, let's go ahead and figure this out, 2 minus 4, so 2 minus 4 is going to be -2, all divided by, and what is 1 minus 0? Well, sorry, -1 minus 0 is going to be -1, and -2 divided by -1 is just simply +2. So the slope of that line is going to be +2. Okay, let's go ahead and find the slope for the next set of coordinates there. So I know that the slope here is going to be y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Okay, what's the value of y2? Well, the value of y2 is 7, so 7 minus, then what's the value of y1? The value of y1 is 5, so 7 minus 5, all over. And then what's the value of x2? The value of x2 is going to be 1, so 1 minus, and then what's the value of x1? Well, the value of x1 is negative 3, so bracket negative 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and find the slope here, and then in your head you should be able to do this. 7 minus 5 is going to be 2 over, and then I have two negative signs, so that's the same thing as 1 plus 3, and 1 plus 3 is going to be 4. Okay, so 2 divided by 4 is going to be 1/2. Okay, let's box that. Okay, so if you compare these two slopes, one slope is 2, the other one is 1/2. Are they the same slope? No, they're not, so they're not parallel. Are these the opposite reciprocal? The answer is no. It's very close, but it's still no, because the opposite reciprocal will be 1/2 with a minus sign in front. So since the slopes don't follow any of the parallel or perpendicular concepts, these two points will follow the neither case. So they're neither parallel or perpendicular. Okay, let's move on to letter E now. Now for letter E, I probably won't write up the slope formula, but you need to find the slope for both these points and you need to consider if they're both parallel or perpendicular or neither. Okay, so let's go ahead and find the slope for the first set of points here, which is 3, 5 and -2, 5. Okay, so I need my y2 value, which is 5. So 5 minus my y1 value, which is 5, divided by my x2 value, which is -2. So -2 minus, and then my x1 value, which is 3. All right, so once you do enough of those, your speed should be pretty good. All right, so 5 minus 5 is going to be 0 all over, and then -2 minus 3 is going to be -5, and 0 divided by a number is going to be 0. So slope there is going to be 0. Okay, now let's find the slope from these coordinates. So let's go ahead and write down slope. I need my y2 value, which is -2. So -2 minus my y1 value, which is 4, all divided by my x2 value, which is 1, minus my x1 value, which is 1. All right, so the top here, if I evaluate -2 minus 4, that's going to be -6 divided by, and then 1 minus 1 is going to be 0, and -6 divided by 0 is undefined. Okay, so if I compare these two slopes, I have 0 and undefined. If you remember from the table question that we did from question number 2, this is the perpendicular case, right? So remember, 0 is the same thing as 0 over 1, and the opposite reciprocal of that is 1 over 0. And if you go in your calculator and type in 1 divided by 0, this gives you undefined or some kind of error. So this is definitely the perpendicular case. Okay, let's move on to letter G now. The good thing with letter G now is we're no longer using numbers, we're now using letters, so this is more of an algebra problem now. So let's go ahead and find the slope for the first set of points, and the first set of points are AB and BA. Okay, so let's go ahead and find the slope here. So slope is going to be equal to y2. Now the value of y2 is going to be a, so this will be a minus the value of y1, which is going to be b, so a minus b, divided by the value of x2, which is b, minus the value of x1, which is a. All right, so a minus b over b minus a. All right, so now we have to do a little bit of algebra here. So this is a minus b divided by. Now what I'm going to do with the bottom fraction here is I'm going to flip that around. So what I mean by flipping that around is if I have 1 plus 2, if I flip that around, that's the same thing as 2 plus 1. Okay, so I'm going to flip that around. So if I flip that around, that's going to be -a plus b. Okay, and then from there, a nice little trick you can do is there's a minus sign there. You can factor that minus sign out, and if I factor that out, I get a minus b. Okay, now if I just kind of think about this on the side here, if I have this negative sign and a minus b, remember if you distribute the minus sign through, you would get -a plus b, right, which matches that. So you can definitely factor out a minus sign, which is good. And one of the reasons why I factor out the minus sign is that notice that I have an a minus a b there and an a minus a b there, right? Those are exactly the same, so I can cancel those off. I have 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom, and that minus sign still tags around. And 1 divided by -1 is just -1. All right, so slope there is just -1. even with all those variables. We just do a little bit of algebra there, simplify it, and we get -1. Okay. Now we're going to do a similar thing with the next 2 points here. The next 2 points are CD and DC. So if I want to find the slope here, it's going to be y2, which is C. So C minus y1, which is D, all over x2, which is D, minus x1, which is C. Okay, so a similar kind of problem here. Let's just go ahead and work on the algebra here. So on the denominator here, which is highlighted here in yellow, I'm going to flip that around. So remember, if 1 plus 2, if I flip that around, that's the same thing as 2 plus 1. Using that idea, I can do this, -C plus D. And just like the previous problem, I'm going to look at the bottom now, and I'm going to factor out this minus sign. If I factor that out, there's a minus sign, and then I can get C minus D. Okay. Now remember, if you just want to do a little calculation here, C minus D, or a side little checkup here, if you distribute the minus sign through, you do get -C plus D, right, which matches that. So make sure that you're comfortable that these expressions here in blue, although they look a little bit different, they're mathematically the same thing. Okay, now notice that this C minus D and this C minus D, they're the same thing, so you can just cancel those off. So you get 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom, and there's a minus sign on the bottom. So 1 divided by -1 is just -1. All right, so as you can see, both these points have the slope of -1. So if the slopes are the same, then these 2 points are parallel, okay, because they have the same slope. Okay, we're gonna skip H, and let's go ahead and do I next. Letters here. So let's go ahead and find the slopes with AB and BA. Did that question incorrect? So I have AB and BA. So let's go ahead and find my slope here. And my y2 value is A. So A minus my y1 value, which is B, divided by my x2 value, which is going to be B, minus my x1 value, which is A. Now this is very similar to what we did in the previous problem, and I know this is going to be just -1. So the same kind of procedure, you flip this around, factor out the minus sign, cancel things out, and you'll get -1. So I won't do that again. It's very similar to what we did in letter G. Let's go ahead and find the slope for the next set of points here. Okay, so this is going to be y2, which is C, minus y1, which is D, so C minus D, all divided by x2, which is -D, so -D, minus my x1, which is -C, so bracket -C. All right, so this one here, we're dealing with a few more negative signs here, so let's go ahead and simplify this. The top is going to be C minus D, divided by -D, and then a minus sign gives you plus C. Okay, and if I go ahead and just flip the denominator, if I look at the bottom and just flip these two around, this is the same thing as C minus D. Now notice that the top and bottom are completely the same, so this just gives you a value of 1. Okay, which is good, because now that we see that, hey, there's a -1 here and a +1 there. So those are opposite reciprocals. So these two lines are going to be perpendicular because the slopes are opposite reciprocals. Okay, let's move on to the next set of questions assigned from the homework. So next question here is going to be question number 4. All right, so find the value of C so that the line passing through the points -2, C and -C, 1 is parallel to the line -5, C and -C, 3. Okay, now the key word here is parallel, right? Parallel means the slopes are equal. All right, so I have a slope for the yellow coordinates and I have a slope for the blue coordinates. All right, so we know that parallel means that the slopes are equal. Let's go ahead and find an expression for the slope for the yellow coordinates. So that's going to be y2. So y2 in this case is going to be 1 minus y1, which is going to be -2. So I'll put that in a bracket, -2, all divided by x2, which is -C. So -C minus All right, let's take a look at question number 4 now. For question number 4, I need to find the value of c so that the line passing through the points -2 comma c and -c comma 1 is parallel to the points -5c and -c comma 3. Okay, so this is one of those classic questions where you have to find the missing coordinates, and one of the key words here is parallel, right? And now if you're parallel, it just means that the slopes are the same. The slopes have to be the same when you're dealing with parallel lines. All right, so let's go ahead and find the slope for the coordinates in yellow. So that's going to be y2. So y2 is going to be 1. So 1 minus y1, which is going to be c. So 1 minus c divided by x2. Now my x2 value is -c minus my x1 value, which is -2. Okay, and let's go ahead and simplify what we have here. So this is 1 minus c divided by, now I have a minus and a minus, so this is going to be -c plus 2. Okay, so that's what we have on the left-hand side. Now on the right-hand side, let's go ahead and find the slope for the coordinates in blue. So that's going to be y2. Now my y2 value for my blue coordinate starts with 3. So 3 minus y1, which is c, divided by x2, which is -c, minus x1, which is bracket -5. Okay, and just like the previous question, let's go ahead and simplify the denominator. I have a negative and a negative, so this is going to be -c plus 5. Okay, so now we have this an equation here, and our goal is to find the value of c. Now, what we're going to do to solve this particular problem is we do have to use some algebra skills here. So I'm going to take this whole bottom piece here, and I'm going to crisscross and multiply with the top right-handed corner. Now, if I do that, let me put the brackets around 3 minus c, and then I'll put brackets around the bottom left-handed term, which is -c plus 2. So as you can see, the -c plus 2 has moved up to the far right-handed corner. And then I'm going to circle the bottom, I'm going to circle this piece right here, which is the bottom right, and I'm going to multiply that with the top left here. So that's my crisscross method here. So the 1 minus c remains, and then in brackets I will put this -c plus 5. So there's my crisscross multiplication step there. Okay, and then from there on, we need to use a few more algebraic skills here, and now we're going to FOIL this. So 1 times -c is -c, and then 1 times 5 is going to be plus 5, and then -c times -c is plus c squared, and -c times positive 5 is -5c. Okay, and then on the right hand side, 3 times -c is -3c, and 3 times 2 is going to be positive 6, and -c times -c is going to be positive c squared, and -c times positive 2 is going to be -2c. Okay, so now we're in a better situation where we can kind of solve for c now. Now there's a plus c squared and a plus c squared there, so these things will just cancel off. And then ask yourself, what is -c minus 5c? Well, -c minus 5c is -6c, and then you have this plus 5 remaining, so plus 5 equals 2. All right, now I have a -3c and a -2c, so -3c minus 2c is going to be -5c, and then you also have this plus c this plus 6 here remaining, so plus 6 over here. Now we've done a fair bit of these kind of problems in class here, so I'm going to go ahead and subtract the 6 here, so subtract 6. So 5 minus 6 is going to be -1. And then I have a -5c here, and there's a -6c there. And then from there, I'll take this -6c and move that over. So this is going to be -1 equals to -5c plus 6c, and -1 equals 2. And if I add -5 plus 6, it's going to be just positive 1c. So the c value there is -1. Okay, so that's a pretty good question there. A lot of work going on, and a lot of algebra as well. Okay, let's go on to question number 5 here. Find the value of c so that the line through the points c comma 1 and 1 comma c is perpendicular to the line -2 comma c and 3 comma, -4. Okay, this one's a bit of a tricky one because if you're perpendicular, the slopes are no longer equal. The slopes are actually opposite reciprocal, right? So we have to do a little bit of work with this one here, but it's just, it's very similar, but we have to do one little modification here. So let's go ahead and find the slopes for the points in yellow there. So the slope is going to be y2, which is going to be c, minus y1, which is 1, divided by x2, which is 1, minus x1, which is c. Okay. All right, so this is very similar to a problem that we've already done before. Let me kind of rearrange the bottom. So if I rearrange the bottom, it's going to be -c plus 1. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to factor out that minus sign. So if I factor that out, I get c minus 1 in the blue brackets. So very similar to some of the other problems that we did prior to this question. And then you'll notice that c minus 1 and c minus 1 are the same. So if I cancel that 1 out, I get -1. Okay. Now, although the slope is -1, because we're dealing with the perpendicular case, this is key, this is the perpendicular case, let's go ahead and do the opposite reciprocal. So the opposite reciprocal of -1 is going to be +1. Okay, so that's the key thing. We find the slope of the yellow coordinates, which was -1, but since we want the points to be perpendicular to the other coordinates, the slopes have to be in the opposite reciprocal case, so change the -1 to a +1. That's key. Okay, so let me go back to the original problem here. I did all the work here, so I know the slope is going to be +1, right? All right, so the slope on the other side has to be equal to +1. After that, we're done with the perpendicular case now, right? So now let's go ahead and find the slope of the green coordinates. So this will be y2, which is -4, minus y1, which is going to be c, divided by x2, which is 3, minus x1, which is -2 in brackets. Okay, so I know that the slope is always going to be equal to 1 because that is the perpendicular case. And let's go ahead and simplify the numerator, which is, let's go ahead and simplify the denominator, sorry. And a negative and negative gives you plus, so this would be 3 plus 2. And this is equal to 1 here. The numerator is -4 minus c, and then the denominator is simply going to be 5. Okay, so how do I solve this equation here? Well, there's a 5 on the bottom, so I can multiply that with the 1. So 1 times 5 is going to be 5. And then I have a -4 minus c there. If I bring the -4 over by adding 4, 5 plus 4 is going to be 9. So 9 equals to -c. And then I can divide both sides by -1. And then what happens is that c equals to -9. So -9 is my final answer for that problem. Okay, there's 4 more questions to go, and then we're done this homework video guide here. So for question number 10, the line through the point 2, y and 1, -4 is perpendicular to a line with a slope of 1/2. Okay, so if it's perpendicular, we need the opposite reciprocal of 1/2, which is going to be -2. And then on the left-hand side, we just need to write a slope expression for the coordinates in yellow. So that's going to be y2, which is -4, minus y1, which is y, all divided by x2, which is 1, minus x1, which is 2. And now we're solving this equation. So this one's a little bit less work than questions 4 and 5. And then let's go ahead and evaluate 1 minus 2. 1 minus 2 is going to be -1, equals to -2 there. And then I take my -1 here and I can multiply it with this -2 there. So if I do that, I get -4 minus y equals to +2. If I go ahead and bring the -4 over, then that's going to be 2 plus 4. And then I have a -y on the left-hand side. And then -y would equal to 2 plus 4, which is 6. And then just divide both sides by -1. And then we have y equals to -6. So y equals to -6, so that the lines will be perpendicular there. Okay, so we went to question number 11 here. So a lot of these questions, the same themes are coming up again. So I have a line through the point 3 comma y and 1 comma negative 2, and it's parallel to a line with a slope of negative 2. All right, so if it's parallel, that's great. That means the slopes are equal, so the slope here will not change. It's going to be negative 2. And then we need to write a slope expression for the coordinates in yellow. So it's going to be y2, which is going to be negative 2, minus y1, which is y, all divided by x2, which is going to be 1, minus x1, which is 3. All right, so similar kind of problem here. Now we solve this algebraically. Now let's go ahead and do the denominator first. 1 minus 3 is going to be negative 2, equals to negative 2 over here. And then I can circle the negative 2 there and multiply it on the right-hand side. So negative 2 times negative 2 is going to be 4. And then I have a negative 2 minus y over here. Okay, and then I have a negative 2 over here. If I bring that to the other side, it's going to be 4 plus 2, which is going to be 6. And just like the previous problem, I can divide both sides by negative 1. And y would equal to negative 6 again. All right, so questions 10 and 11, the work is similar, and we actually get the same answer. Y equals to negative 6 for number 11, and y was also negative 6 for number 10. All right, good stuff. I believe we have 2 more questions. Let's go ahead and take a look at question number 12 now. So I have the line through this point in yellow and that point in yellow, and it's perpendicular to a line with a slope of 2. Find the value of x. Okay, so if we're dealing with a perpendicular case, then the slopes have to be opposite reciprocal. So since it's negative 2, the opposite reciprocal of that is going to be 1 over 2, positive 1 over 2. And then I need a slope expression on the left-hand side with my coordinates in yellow. So that's going to be y2, which is negative 1, minus y1, which is negative 6, all divided by x2, which is negative 2, minus x1, which is x. And now we're solving this equation now. I would go ahead and simplify the numerator here. So that's the same thing as negative 1 plus 6. So negative 1 plus 6 is going to be 5. All over negative 2 minus x, and then I have 1/2 on the right hand side. All right, so now we're going to solve this fractional equation here. I recommend that you circle the bottom right hand corner here, the 2, and multiply it with the 5. So 2 times 5 is going to be 10, equals 2, and then I'll take this expression here in blue and I'll multiply that with the 1. All right, so the 1 remains here, and then I have a bracket of negative 2 minus x. Okay, and if you distribute the 1 into the brackets here, you still get negative 2 minus x, and then on the left-hand side, I have a positive 10. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's add 2 to both sides. So 10 plus 2 is going to be 12, so 12 equals to negative x, and I would just divide both sides by negative 1 here, and I get negative 12 equals to x for that particular problem. Okay, great. We're almost done here. One more question to go, and we're done this homework video guide here. So question number 13, the line through this point in yellow is parallel to a line with a slope of negative 4 over 3. Okay, so since it's parallel, that's the easier case where we just keep the slopes the same. So the slope will be negative 4 over 3 on the right-hand side. And then we just need a slope expression on the left-hand side using the yellow coordinates. So that's going to be y2. So y2 is going to be 4 minus y1, which is going to be 2, all divided by x2, which is going to be 3, minus x1, which is going to be x. Then after that, we're just solving this equation here. If I look at the numerator here, 4 minus 2 is going to be 2, all over 3 minus x, and that's going to equal to negative 4/3. And just like the previous question, I will start in the bottom right-hand corner, which is a 3, and I'll multiply with that with the 2. So 3 times 2, I'm doing a crisscross here. So 3 times 2 is going to be 6, equals 2. And then I take my bottom 3 minus x here, and I will multiply that with the negative 4. All right, so how do I write that? It's going to be negative 4, bracket 3 minus x. So when we're multiplying a binomial, always have in brackets, and then you would just distribute here. All right, so that's going to be negative 12. So negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. And then we have positive 4x. And then I have a 6 on the left-hand side. If I add 12 to both sides, 6 plus 12 is going to be 18. So 18 equals to 4x. And then we can divide both sides by 4. The 4's cancel off. X equals to 18 over 4. And if you go with your calculator, that's about 4.5. All right, so let me just double check that. 18 divided by 4. Yeah, it's about 4.5. All right, so that concludes this homework video guide on section 4.4.